Hey guys,
Hi guys,
how did you sleep last night? Were you out like
Were
a
you
light
out
sleep?
like as soon as your head hit the pillow?
Or was it a bit more tossing and turning
with those racing thoughts? We've all been there. Where experts have been looking into different stages of sleep for a really long time, and it turns out there actually might be more stages of sleep than we originally thought. That's what we're getting into in today's episode.
So we're finding out
what happens to our bodies when we go to sleep.
Why some people find it
harder than others
to get to sleep,
and some advice on how to get a night's sleep as well. I'm Eka Farouk, and this is what in the words from BBC World Service. I'm here with Caroline Steele, who has been looking into all the science behind the sleep. She's the girl who is in the know. First off, Caroline, how did you sleep last night?
Not very well. It maybe
took me like an hour and a half to fall asleep.
And then I woke up hot.
So I opened the window, and then I woke up
birds, and then
by birds, and then
collected.
The bins being collected.
Yeah, so not a disaster.
So not a disaster, but I'm not feeling my best.
Oh
no.
Sorry to hear that.
How do you normally sleep?
What kind of sleeper are you?
I take a long time to fall asleep.
And then if I
wake up,
I take a long time to fall asleep. So I'd say in general.
So I also say in general, I'm a bad sleeper,
and I kind of feel like
I'm constantly on a quest to
work out how to fall asleep better.
But I'm not very good at it.
I feel like I can pretty much lie my head down anywhere,
and I'll get to sleep. A
bit of a skill.
I don't mean to brag. I'm so jealous. Can you fall asleep on a train? That's what I'm always really jealous of. Yeah. People who sort of put their head in their heads. Kind of embarrassing sometimes as well. So you are the opposite of me.
If I want to fall asleep,
I have to have this ice mask. I have to have earpods.
I take these
as well.
I need this with me
everywhere I go.
I use a
lamp
to
wake up in the morning. That's sort of mini
sunrise.
And I feel like
that maybe helps. Why is
there such a difference
sometimes?
Then some people finding it much harder than others to get sleep.
So there's lots of different reasons.
It's partly a genetic lottery. So there's thousands of different genes which influence how easily we do or don't fall asleep. So it's partly kind of the hand you're dealt when you are born.
It's also down to
feeling safe. So if you don't feel
moment,
safe
really
in that movement, it's really hard to fall asleep.
Imagine trying to fall asleep.
So if you imagine trying to fall asleep with your front door wide open,
that would be hard,
right?
But it's also down to how
safe people felt as a child.
Some research shows
that if you felt unsafe or neglected as a child, you can become wired to be super alert. Which is really useful adaptations if you're growing up in an unsafe environment.
But when you're
older, you're safe, you're tired,
and you just want to sleep well.
You just want to sleep well. It's not so helpful.
And it's also down
to
our mental health.
If you're more anxious,
if you've
got more racing thoughts. That's also been shown to keep you up at night. There's a lot of different factors affecting the quality of the sleep.
I want to talk
a little bit about the science behind all of this.
What actually happens.
and what actually happens to our bodies when you go to sleep.
What do we know about that?
What do we know about that?
So
it's quite hard to study sleep.
We don't know
everything,
but we do know
that there are collections of brain cells, a collections of neurons in the hypothalamus, which is part of the brain that responsible for regulating our body function,
and they're
synchronized with the outside world. So they're synchronized when it's light and dark outside.
And during the day,
when it's light, they are more active and they do things like increasing your heart rate, increasing your body temperature. And then at night, they calm down a bit, they become less active. Your heart rate decreases, your body temperature decreases. All sort of in preparations for your falling asleep.
And then
there's also really interesting chemical called adenosine, which basically builds up
in your brain
as you're awake,
as
your brain cells
are hard at work,
they make adenosine. And adenosine sort of gives you this pressure and needs to fall asleep. And luckily, once you do fall asleep, your brain sort of clears and you wake up the next day feeling refreshed. But it's down to the buildup of adenosine and these incredible cells in your brain that you're synchronized with the outside world.
All right, well, we've been finding out...
Well, when we have been finding out what happens to the body when we don't get enough sleep, Jonathan Tam is a sleep doctor and expert. He sent us this. Let's have a listen. You don't sleep during the night. You can't process the things you have done during the day. You can lay down the memories of the new things you have done, and you've been more affected by any traumatic experiences that happen. Sleep is important for our immune system. If you don't get it, you may not be able to draw up those pesky pores and easily, and you may not respond to vaccines as well. During the day, toxins can build up in our brain. These are removed during sleep. And there's some evidence to suggest that if they're not, we may be more at risk for conditions like Alzheimer's disease later in life. Quite apart from all of this, your brain knows just how important sleep is. If you don't get it one night, then the next day it will make you feel exhausted to encourage you get more. I know that you recently went to a sleep lab, right? What happened there?
What did you go through?
What did you go to?
So I went to a sleep lab.
So I went to sleep lab
in Cardiff in Wales,
which was really interesting. They sort of have all these rooms which are sort of designed for a perfect night's sleep. They've got no windows
to wake you up.
So there's no light to wake you
They're
up.
They're at the perfect temperature.
They're at a perfect temperature.
So everything's
sort of in favor of you falling asleep. Apart from the fact that they put electrodes
on your scalp,
which isn't super comfortable.
So I sort of had a cup with
electrodes attached to the skin on my scalp to monitor my brain as I was falling asleep.
And so
they're sort of looking for two things in particular.
They're looking for alpha waves,
which are signs you are conscious and aware. So when your alpha waves sort of disappear, it shows that you're falling asleep.
And they're also looking for signs
of rapid eye movements. Rapid eye movements, which is one of the stages of the sleep. So it can sort of tell you at what stage of sleep you are.
Unfortunately, I didn't
fall asleep. Oh no! I was going to fall asleep, You must have fallen asleep.
Sleep lab.
You were in a sleep lab.
I didn't fall asleep, which
I didn't fall asleep.
was really frustrating.
Which was really frustrating.
I think the added pressure of being like.
The added pressures of being like
I'm in a sleep lab.
I want to learn about my brain when I sleep. I must fall asleep.
I just sort of lay there
really frustrated.
But I got to see my
but I got to see my sort of brain graph afterwards, which was really interesting. I could see the alpha waves becoming more spaced out and sort of less frequent as I was sort of drifting off.
But then I'd suddenly jolt back awake and the alpha wave.
Drop back awake and then the alpha waves would be back. So
yeah, so it's a very frustrating.
Yeah, it was very
frustrating experience.
Very frustrating experience.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But we heard about
those sleep stages there with the REM stage as well.
I wondered if you could talk.
I wonder if you could talk me through that a little bit more, because
there could be more sleep stages than
we thought, right?
Yeah, so it's sort of generally
accepted that there are 4 stages of sleep.
There's light sleep,
the light sleep, deeper sleep, the deepest sleep,
and
then the REM sleep. That's the rapid eye movement sleep, which is what happens when you're sort of dreaming and your eyes are darting all over the place. And we sort of cycle
through
those stages about once every 90 minutes.
But I interviewed a scientist
from the University of Oxford who looked at people sleep in MRI scanners, and he thinks there could be as many as 19 different stages of sleep.
Wow. Yeah, which is really interesting.
And he thinks we don't necessarily go through them
one after the others.
We don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We could go stage 4, stage 9, stage 12, stage 2.
And that
there's sort of many different routes into sleep. But for now, sort of more research indeed.
And what if you enter
a different stage
just a much later time
than you normally would?
For example, probably lots of listeners can relate to coming back from night.
But at 3 a.m., do you know what happens to the body then? Does it go into certain stage or what happens? You're still
if we're talking
about the 4 stages of sleep, you still sort of broke through the different stages.
But if you have to wake up
a certain time,
it might be
that you end up sort of getting yanked out of sleep.
Say
a really deep stage of sleep when you weren't really ready to wake up.
So as well as getting enough sleep,
it's great if you can wake up at the right point in your sleep cycle, so you don't start when your alarm goes off and it's really jarring, and that can be avoided if you can sync up with your sleep cycle. And I know you're not an expert, but you have been through the journeys. You're still going through the journeys. Do you have any advice for getting a good night's sleep? What helped you? There's so many different things you can do. I guess it's kind of it's worth working out when it is
stopping you from falling.
That's stopping for you falling asleep. It could be your environment, which is great if you can change it.
You want to be
in a dark room. If you're not in a dark room, get an ice mask like me.
You want to be in a quiet.
You want to be in a quiet space.
If it's not quiet,
this is not quiet. I would recommend using
earplugs. You want it to be a good temperature.
You want it to be a good temperature.
Just about 19 degrees.
So about 19 degrees, which I know is really hard
if you're somewhere
where it's hot and it's
summer.
summer.
I'm struggling with that at the
moment.
So I'm using a fan
leaving
and
my window
leaving
open,
my window open.
But with that comes extra noise, so it's
extra noise. So
difficult.
It's difficult.
If you're someone who kept up by anxiety and racing thoughts,
it's a good idea to try to do something before bed
that will distract you
from those.
from those. So the sort of research shows that
doing things like reading a book
that takes you into another world,
or chatting to a friend
or something like that,
could really help.
Not doing things like drinking coffee
that can make a huge difference.
So caffeine is incredible.
It blocks the receptors in our brains
for adenosine, which is the chemical I mentioned before. That sort of builds up and makes us feel tired. So it can really help if you really sort of symptoms of sleepiness. But then it can stop you falling asleep later. So avoiding things like caffeine, avoiding alcohol, which also disrupt your durations and quality of sleep.
Okay, well, let's bring in the
expert on this. You've got some sleep tips
for you all.
You heard from Jonathan's time, the sleep doctor, a little bit earlier. Let's bring him back and see what his tips are. You can have sleep by trying to have your body clock. You can do that by getting up at roughly the same time every day and seeking light when you do, but avoiding it later in the evening. You can also get into trouble if you spend a lot of time in a bed awake, at which point you might start associate your bedroom even the act of trying to sleep with wakefulness. So if you are having trouble with your sleep, it's important only to go to bed. When you start feeling sleepy, do not having a rigid bedtime. If you do find yourself lying in bed awake for long periods, then simply get up, go somewhere else and do something else until you feel sleepy. If you're choosing to do other things in the bedroom like reading, watching televisions, even walking, try and take those things somewhere else and save the bedroom for sleep and intimacy with partners. But through all of this, it's important to recognize that sleep isn't something you can try to do. It's something that comes to you. And if it doesn't, well, sometimes you just have to give yourself a bit of slack and let it come to you. Now, a couple of bad nights here and there are part of life. But if you find yourself sleeping badly for more than 3 months, it's definitely time to see a doctor.
I know
you went on this personal mission for this documentary.
Has your sleep improved?
Have you sleep improved since then?
Have you discovered more about
your sleep at least since then?
I've definitely discovered
more about my sleep.
And
my sleep has improved.
But
not for
probably the reason
you think it would.
So every morning I wake up, I have a coffee.
And then sort of throughout the day, I have a couple of decaf coffees.
I normally have a decaf.
I normally have a decaf coffees before bed as well.
And I went to replace my coffee pots
a couple of weeks ago.
And I realized
that my decaf pot was set, a box of pots was set where my caffeinated pot should be. And my caffeinated pot was set where my decaf pot should be.
So for the last 3
months, and while making this program,
and
while going to the sleep lab,
I've been waking up having a decaf coffee, wondering why I still
wondering why I still felt awful.
And then just before bed, drinking coffee.
So I'd say really pay attention to what coffee you're drinking. So since I fixed that, I'm sleeping much better. But not for any reasons other than realizing I made a really stupid mistake before.
Oh, well, at least you got there.
Oh, well, at least you got there in the end. Yeah, I got it in the end.
3 months of bad sleep.
Yeah, 3 months of bad sleep just due to accidentally putting my caffeinated pot in the wrong place.
Gosh.
Caroline, oh my gosh. Caroline, thank you so much for coming on chatting
sleep. I learned a lot.
I learned a lot.
And I hope you get some good sleep as well. Thank you, I'll try.
Thank you, I'll try.
I don't know about you guys.
I'm taking notes of all those sleep tips. It's been so useful.
What's helped you
guys get a better night's sleep in the past?
Below, we're going to read all of them. Like and subscribe too. You've been